Thanks for joining. I am Dave Clark, and I lead readiness, learning, and training for Dynamics 365 Field Service and related solutions. And today we want to show and tell all the new features and capabilities that are released as part of the April 2020 wave. I'm joined by a few members of the Field Service product team that are shown to the right, just like Peggy said, Jason, Garish, and Vinay. But it is important to note that there are a lot of project managers and a lot of engineers that brought these new features to life. So as part of the April 2020 wave, we have 13 new features that have been added to the field service solution. Some of them are actually already available as early access, and you can see detailed documentation that is live on docs.microsoft.com. These are the ones here that in this docs column here are shown as live. And other features are actually going to be available next week, starting on April 1st. And on April 1st, we'll have documentation for them as well. You can see that the new features span across field service and work order management, integrations to other systems, scheduling, artificial intelligence, and mobility. We're going to talk about all of these features, and we're going to demonstrate some of them. And like Peggy said, it's going to be 90 minutes, and feel free to post your questions in the chat or actually speak them live at the end. So taking a step back from the 13 features, you'll see that all of them align with the three areas that Microsoft is investing in field service. And those are scheduling, technician success, and connected service. So for scheduling, the focus is on accommodating all the different ways an organization would assign work orders and other service activities to their resources. So whether it's an emergency work order that needs to be scheduled to the closest person as soon as possible, or you want to schedule routine maintenance to a veteran and an intern together for training purposes, we want to offer best-in-class scheduling software. And for technician success, the investment is in providing mobile workers with the devices and data to improve their ability to fix issues at the customer's location. This is why recent investments make it easier to view customer and asset information on the mobile app, or why field service works with remote assist on mixed reality headsets like HoloLens for remote collaboration between people at different locations. Another huge investment area is in what's called connected service. And by this, we mean a few things. In the literal sense, it's harnessing the data telemetry from internet-connected sensors and IoT sensors to inform when, where, and how a machine or piece of equipment should be fixed. But in the general sense, we see connected service as the idea that a field service work order is connected to and exists alongside other apps like Dynamics 365 Customer Service or Remote Assist or Supply Chain or even AI and Azure solutions. And at Microsoft and on the field service team, we're starting to see that organizations that adopt a modern field service business application can shift their business from a cost center that treats work orders and on-site service as an expense to profit center that will bundle the service into a new product offering, and then finally to servitization that delivers just-in-time service. And this is an experience where uptime is actually the real product that is being delivered. So when it comes to the 13 new features, I first want to mention, how do you actually get these new features? So let's say a feature is in preview or in early access. The way to get this is to log into your admin center, your Microsoft 365 admin center, and this will take you to the Power Apps admin center. And from there, you want to choose your environment, and then you want to select Update, and that's what's shown in this picture to the right. Now, if the feature is becoming generally available, or as we call it, GA, all you need to do is upgrade your solution. So you either go to Admin Center and upgrade your solution, or if you're actually on the latest version of field service, the upgrade will happen automatically. Now, typically the upgrade happens a day after general availability, but because of the current situation, it's actually the forced upgrade has actually been moved to May 1st. So with that, let's take a look at our first feature, which is a really exciting one, and it's called inspections. I'm going to go ahead and shift to my environment. So a very common ask among field service organizations, people who deliver on-site service, is that they need an inspection type. They need inspection type capability. And in general, this means a lot of things, but specifically we hear two most very common requests. The first is that when I inspect customer assets, or when I inspect a piece of equipment, I need to go through a checklist of events and go through a checklist of questions that need to be answered. And those are, whether it's by the same asset type or it's rather just part of your common procedure, the technician needs to be guided through these questions. The other thing we might hear is that before even beginning some type of work, the field technician will need to go through some sort of safety protocol, and they can't begin work until the safety protocol is completed. So for situations like this, where the technician needs to be guided through a digital form, we have this new feature called inspections. As an example, I created an inspection here that's to inspect a fire extinguisher. And what it's going to do is it's going to take the field technician through a set of questions like, first note, what type of extinguisher is this? Please confirm whether the extinguisher is visible. Verify that certain parts of it are intact. We might ask them to record a pressure reading and so forth, or maybe even upload a picture or a file. So the way that you create these surveys, or inspections rather, is through a drag and drop interface. So it's a new entity. I'm here in the field service app. It's a new entity called inspections. And what I can do is I can drag and drop different types of question types. So it might be a checklist. It might be a radio group. I might say that I want someone to submit a file, maybe note the date and time. And for each of these, what I can do is I can say, perhaps this question needs to be required. And if I hit this gear symbol here and go to the right, I can add more details like a title and a description. For certain things like a text field, I can actually say that only a number should be inputted into this field. So with a very simple drag and drop interface, you create your inspection. And one of the real benefits of it is that it's so quick to create. So imagine if there's 40 or 50 different questions that someone needs to go through, or imagine that there's 50 assets, each with one question, which is pass fail. You can put together that very quickly here. So first you create it and you'll publish it and you'll see it here in the desktop view. But eventually, once you create a work order, and let's say you want to add that inspection to this work order, you'll go ahead and add it as a service task here. So I create a new service task. All I do is associate an inspection to it. And then when this work order is finally scheduled and dispatched to a technician, they're going to log into their mobile device and they're going to see from that service task, the work order service task, they're going to see that inspection. So from here, they would just go through and answer the questions, right? The locking pin is there, tamper seal, tank full, 100 PSI. They can choose the date and time that this inspection took place, might take a picture, upload something from their device, or maybe just a simple text field. And then when they're done, all they have to do is mark it as complete. Now, for those of you who are familiar with field service work orders and service tasks, you know that every single service task can be related to a customer asset. So here I'm saying that this inspection relates to actually a specific fire extinguisher number 27 that exists at my customer's location. So this helps you build asset service history. If the inspection relates to asset management, it might just relate to a safety protocol, in which case this field could be blank. So I think this is a very, very exciting feature. This one is actually going to be public preview in April, and we're expecting it to be generally available later on. So I think this is a really good reason to upgrade to the latest version. So that's it for inspections. What I want to do now is I want to ask Jason Cohen to present to talk about time entries and some other AI features.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, excited to sort of share another amazing gap that we're finally closing after years here. So obviously we just talked about inspection, lots of a major thing that people have been asking for a long time. Now we're talking about time entry, which is another major ask that people have had for field service for forever. We're really excited that two things, I guess. One, that we're finally closing the gap. Two, that we've aligned it with, so for folks who are familiar with project service, you're probably familiar with the time entry capability that project service has offered for a long time. So field service, we worked with project service closely to sort of separate and extend that solution. So it still works for project service the way it always has, which is great. But it'll now work for field service as well, and we'll be putting those time entries into the same table, into the same entity. So really excited that sort of these are working together, and we're allowing organizations that use both to take advantage of both, or organizations that are just using either to continue to sort of use them for PSA only, or now use them for FS only. So let's sort of quickly talk about how we configure this, and then we'll show a little bit of how this would work. So a couple things. So if you go into field service settings, we have this thing called timestamp frequency, which is a separate feature in and of itself, but will influence how your time entries get created. So if we set it to per booking status change or per field service status change, we'll end up seeing how, well, I'll show how that works, but if we do per booking status change, we'll start to see how we start capturing timestamps at a more granular level, and depending on how we're configuring time entries, capture those time entries at a more granular level. So over here to the right, we see this time entry section of the field service settings, and we have these two configurations. One, so we have an option for manual time entry creation, which I think what was interesting as we started to explore this feature is lots of organizations simply just want to be able to create these natively. So if you don't want us to automatically create them under any circumstances, or if you want to have your own automated scenarios, manual is a great option. Effectively allows you to drive this in whatever way makes sense for your business. Two, we have this other option, auto generate from booking timestamps. So if you choose this option, as your booking sort of walks through its life cycle, we'll automatically generate time entries between those timestamps that are generated every time you change status of the booking. So whenever a booking timestamp is created, we'll create those time entries between them once that booking gets to completed. And for clarity, that happens once those time entries sync online. So if you're offline, it won't immediately create those time entries until they sync. But once they're created, once they sync, that all gets created online by the server, if you've set it to auto-generate from booking timestamp. The other thing worth pointing out here, so time cost actual source. So if you're familiar with actuals, and this is a feature that not everybody's using, so I won't spend a ton of time on it, but we have this concept, this entity called actuals, and actuals are generated or have historically been generated from field service when the work order is close posted from booking journals. So by default, the system will continue to work the way it's always worked. If you're using actuals, we'll generate those actuals from booking journals. But if you would like instead to have those actuals generated from time entries, we have this new option, booking work order time entry approval. So when that time entry reaches an approved state, we'll generate an actual for it. Again, another optional configuration. If you want it to work the way it's always worked, great. Or if you don't care about them, as lots of organizations don't, also fine. So once you've configured the system to, I'm going to set it to be automatic, let's take a look at sort of how this would work here. In the interest of time, I already walked a booking through some steps last night, but so if you're familiar with field service, every time you change the state of a booking, field service is generating a booking timestamp, and that booking timestamp sort of captures the moment that occurred, whether you're offline or online, and the status that you entered at that moment. So at last night at 11:04 p.m., I scheduled this booking. At 11:04 p.m., I set this booking into traveling. 11:06, I was on site. 11:12, I started my in progress time, which incidentally, back to this other feature for timestamp frequency, is also, this is another in progress state. Wrench time, we're now capturing this here, which is, I think, incredibly useful for a number of customer scenarios. And then at 11:15, I completed it. Obviously, this was a really fast booking for, you might have seen in a real booking scenario, sort of many more minutes or even hours between these, but in the interest of our demo here. So this was me walking through, a booking through its steps, through its statuses here. Once it hit completed, the system automatically generated these time entries between those states. So from 11:04 when I was traveling to 11:06 when I arrived on site, I have this 3-minute traveling related to traveling time entry. From 11:06 to 11:12, I have the 6-minute on site time entry. And from 11:12 to 11:15, when I said it was completed, so 11:12 I said wrench time, 11:15 I said I was completed, we're generating this wrench time entry. I think this is really worth sort of highlighting here. We're allowing this to happen automatically, and we're capturing all that granularity of this time entry. So this time entry, so if I open up one of these time entries, we can see here that we capture all those time milestones, the duration, which are kept in sync. If I want to adjust these, I can. So if I want to change this to 40 minutes, let's say, that changes the end time, keeps the start time the same, captures it as work, captures the related resource. I'm logged in as field service admin, captures the related work order, captures the related booking, and because I had that timestamp frequency set to per booking status, it's also capturing the relevant booking state for this period of time. So as an organization, I can start to track, sort of where my time is going at a really sort of hopefully in an automated way and in a way that's at the appropriate level of granularity for your business. So I think this is super exciting. I think I'll point out 2 other things about time entry. So one, you can manually create them. This one I just manually created earlier today. So I'm just creating, you can create a time entry for, even if you are automatically doing it, you can also manually create them as appropriate. So I've created a time entry from 8 to 5, because I was working from 8 to 5 this day, but we don't, and if I want to, I can associate it to a work order, or it can be unassociated to any work orders. And just as an organization, allowing you and your technicians to track time. I think the final thing I'll point out is this last scenario here for time off, sort of this vacation entry. So if I create a time off request, historically for field service, you would, I've always been able to create time off requests, and I can say, when I intend to be out. So let's say I'm going to be out in June from the 8th to the 12th. So let's say, let's save that. What's going to happen is synchronously, this was approved because of how my user is configured, but it's also going to create time entries for that. So we're going to get this, here we go, we get this time entry from the 8th to the 12th. So I've got this four-day one. Because the time entry was approved, or the time off request was approved, the time entry also shows the same state, so they're kept in sync. So if I hadn't auto-approved from the other side and I approved it here, this would show up. On the time off request as approved the moment I approved it over here. Or if I adjusted any of these times, it'll keep, synchronously, it'll keep that time off request aligned as well. Last thing I'll point out, so if I change one of these, so let's grab this guy, the one that we looked at earlier. Whatever your approval process is as an organization, however this gets to approved, if I change this to approved and then save this, so what'll happen on the work order, historically, if you're familiar with field service, because of how we have always done it, actuals don't get created until the work order is closed posted. This work order is only open completed. If I look now, though, at the related actuals, because of how I've configured this, I now get this new cost time actual for the same period of time from 11:12 to 11:52, that 40-minute period, capturing, sort of, it's related to the work order. It's going to be related to that booking, to that resource. So it's going to capture all that detail that would have happened historically from the moment you close posted it. So I think this is, really exciting new feature that we are enabling an automated option for, hopefully, sort of aligning to how organizations are driving their work through statuses or through a manual process, however they choose. So that's time. Let's pivot now and take a look at sorry, here it is, the incident type suggestion. So if you're familiar with incident types, this is a new feature that we're really excited about. We think incident type is one of the most powerful field service concepts in the solution. If you get it right, you're going to have your organization's effectively on the path to success. You're going to have great, sort of good details at your work order. The scope's going to be great. You're going to have the right products and services, so you can understand what things you need to bring, bring tasks or characteristics. So incident type is such a critical component of field service that we hope everybody's using it, and we hope everybody's using it well. But we know that not everybody is using it well, and so we've introduced this new incident type feature called incident type suggestions, rather. If just to sort of point a couple things out. So incident types by default can bring products with them, can bring services with them, tasks, characteristics, etc. If I apply a well-crafted incident type to a work order, it's the best way to make sure that my work order gets all of the right details, right? All of these products automatically created, all those services, all those tasks. This feature allows us this incident type suggestions feature allows us to start highlighting some of the key field service problem areas, right? A poor understanding, sort of where we have folks who don't understand the sort of key capabilities of the system, poor implementation that isn't sort of maximizing the use of this and not applying this great scope. Improving our organization's ability to first-time fix. So we effectively were allowing organizations to, hopefully, we hope with this feature anyway, we're allowing organizations to better implement that scope, better understand their work orders before they go out to the site, and make sure they're planning correctly, which hopefully allows them to complete that work effectively the first time. So the idea here, once we take a look at this, is we have this model running in the back end once it's enabled. So if we go into field service settings, you can enable incident type suggestion, which if it's not turned on, this model simply won't be running. But once you turn it on, and for clarity, this is in preview. So just so we're clear, this is in preview state, but when you turn this on, it'll run once a week. So it'll run as soon as you turn it on, it'll run in fairly short order. So anytime in the next few minutes to hour, depending, a couple hours, perhaps max, depending on sort of demand on the service at that moment. But it'll run in fairly short order. It'll review based on historical data filter, sort of a certain amount of data from the past, so last 3 months, last 6, last 12, or all, and then it'll return the top 10 suggestions based on this data, based on your actual usage of work orders, to say, based on your usage of work orders, we see that there's the potential to improve some of these incident types. And if you improve incident type, you improve work, sort of delivery of this work. So just to highlight one of these examples, right? So in work order, in incident type suggestion, if we get a suggestion around work order product, so what we're saying here is, if we open it up, what we're saying is, based on how you're actually using work order, this incident type on this work order, we're saying consider adding this product to this incident type with the quantity of 3 of this unit. Of the 80 work orders with this incident type, 66 of them also included this product. But because of how we're detecting this, we can tell that it's not using it's not being added as part of the incident type. It's being added manually later on. So what we're saying here is, we think because of this sort of overlap, we think it makes sense for you just to extend, or at least to consider extending that incident type. What it'll allow you to do as an organization is be aware that you may need to use 3 of these things, and that you should bring them with you rather than sort of having to come back later on a second visit. So you'll know that up front. So we have suggestions around product. We have suggestions around work order services, and we also have suggestions to potentially sort of combine incident types if you're consistently adding 2 incident types onto the same work order, and then extend that to create a super incident type, for lack of a better term. A couple things worth pointing out here. I can apply the suggestion, I can dislike the suggestion. Both of these will, so if I apply it, obviously it's going to add this to my incident type. If I dislike it, it's going to simply sort of remove it and put it into a state which allows us to say, let's not provide this suggestion again, because we don't want to sort of create noise or dilute the value of the feature as the organization. So if I push apply, we'll see that the system will say it's applying the suggestion, and it's saying 1 incident type suggestion was applied successfully. So if I take a quick look at this incident type, we'll see now this product. Let me just refresh here. Oh, that was the product. My apologies. We'll see. We can actually see here, if I take a look here at the incident type suggestions. So we can see this one, which I applied, which has added now on this unexpected reboot, this assembly Maestro ARM product, quantity 3 of the unit that was suggested in my incident type suggestions. So we think, this is the kind of feature that we could never have built in the past. That's really providing that next level value to our customers, to sort of not just help them use the system, giving them an additional feature, but is helping them sort of get that next level insight into their business and how they can actually improve delivery of field service for their organization. We're really excited. We hope everybody will take a look at this and give us feedback. There are other incident type suggestions that we might consider in the future, hopefully everybody will take a look and find this incredibly valuable, and we'd love to hear how it's being used. With that, I'll turn it over to Girish.
Thanks, Jason. That was pretty impressive. And for the next segment, what I want to cover is some of the same next level, next generation of insights and suggestions powered by AI, continuing with the theme that Jason had talked about. And for the next segment, we're going to focus on connected field service. Connected field service with IoT is already a leading capability in how you can use IoT and connected devices to get proactive alerts and notifications about possible issues with the device. But with the Wave 1 release, we're making it even more smarter. I mean, what happens is, when you configure a rule, you may get a lot of alerts. You may get hundreds and thousands of alerts that you may not have enough time or resources to go look at every one of them. I mean, we personally run into it in our personal lives, right? You may have a ton of notifications that you have configured on your mobile phone. You may get hundreds of notifications a day, but you don't even look at most of them, right? Because it's too much of noise than real signal in some cases. But that doesn't mean that you should turn off the alerts or turn off the notifications. And this is where with the AI-driven suggestions, we're making the system smarter. We're learning from human behavior and what are the actions you have taken in the past. And based on those actions, we're going to suggest you priority and give you a score, and perhaps even suggest the next best action for you to go take on one of these alerts. So with that, let me switch over to my demo. And as you can see, we have a connected field service here configured, and you have thousands of alerts that are getting in. But historically, you won't see these suggested priority, but now we are starting to add some of them as high priority, some of them as low priority, really based on what actions you took in the past. As an example, you may have converted a specific type of alert, like a vent airflow or a temperature outlet, to a case or a work order. On some of those, you may have just ignored. So the model, AI model, is learning from your past behaviors on what actions you took, and then it's going to automatically suggest, hey, here are the actions that we think other technicians have taken in the past. So if you have a new technician that's new to the team, or somebody, you're starting to see new and different kinds of combinations of data, now the system will look at the alerts and it'll give you a few things. One is it'll tell you it's a high priority or low priority. It will also give you a score from 0 to 100 that the model thinks how high it is. And this is also one where in the future you can look at automation where you can say, hey, anything above a 90, I'm fairly confident that the model is doing a great job, so I'm going to automatically convert that to a case, or I'm going to automatically convert to a work order. And not only that, the system is also telling you if you convert it to a case or an incident type or a work order, what's the incident type you should use? Meaning, what's the type of repair you should perform when you get an alert like these? So this makes IoT alerts even more actionable, and this makes adoption possible for customers to identify some of these issues way ahead of time before the machine or the asset has a failure. And this is looking at a number of things. It's looking at the past service history with work orders and cases. It's also looking at all of your telemetry readings, and based on that, it's building an intelligent profile and giving you those recommendations. But this is, again, the next wave of insights that we're generating for field service customers powered by AI. And this is just the first tip of the spear, if you will, in terms of our AI capabilities in connected field service. And if you have additional suggestions and thoughts on where you could use AI in connected field service, would love to hear from you. Now, continuing the theme with the smarter insights, we also shipped a feature last year called the IoT Alert Measures and Service History, which uses Azure Time Series Insights for a mashup of historical data, both from an IoT telemetry perspective, but also from a historical work orders. We've added a ton of improvements to those capabilities now. So now, based on your feedback and based on feedback from many other customers, we made it more easy for customers to adopt this. For example, you can see the averages and you can see that temperatures dip and down, and you can see all the measurements coming from IoT. But you can also see the service history. So you can see what work orders were created, when were they closed. And not only that, based on your feedback, you can now also see the cases that were associated to this asset. So you can see the full history. So instead of looking at 4 different places to see this information, you now have one set of comprehensive view to see all your information about your assets in one single place. And again, this feature is all well documented on how you can deploy and how you can use this. So please go check that out. Now, one of the other additions to we've added is this information, like this great charts and mashups, is fantastic. But sometimes technicians really want to see a real simple aggregate, right? They only want to see, hey, what was the average temperature for the last 7 days? Or how many work orders have we carried out on this asset in the past month? So it really gives you a quick snapshot of what's going on with the asset. And this can help you in ways, for example, if the average temperature has been consistently high for the past week, you know that there is something that's not right. Right, you don't need to analyze a chart. You can just look at a number and sort of make that judgment. But you can also say, hey, if there has been a work order lately, if it's 0, then it tells me that, hey, no one's touched the machine in the last 30 days. So meaning that I may want to create a new work order to send someone to take a second look, as an example. And again, this is something that will be available in 2020 Wave 1 without any additional setup. So once you install the 2020 Wave 1 release in your IoT alerts, in your IoT device, and in customer asset, you will see this summary tile information light up automatically to give you those insights, which previously you had to make 10 clicks and 20 calculations to get those informations. Now we're bringing this up front so that the business users, the dispatchers, and the technicians can make a decision right away based on that. So with that, let me hand it over to Vinay. Vinay, take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Girish. So let's see some of the features that the scheduling team has been working on and is releasing them as part of the April 2020 Wave 1. As you can see that we've, as Dave explained in the beginning, requirement dependencies is something that the scheduling has been working on and will be available as part of the 2020 Wave 1. It is already available on the early access. If you are part of it, you'd already be seeing it. And if not, you could still enroll and get to the early access bits. So we've been seeing scenarios for the customers where a technician has to do a sequence of jobs in a specific order. For example, if the technician has to go to a location and pick up the parts that are necessary to perform a work order, like installation or a repair job, then the pickup of the parts has to be done before the installation or the repair job is done. So those kind of dependencies can be scheduled together by RSO. That is the capability that RSO is lighting up with this feature. And RSO would understand these requirements and would schedule them in the sequence that you need them to be scheduled. There are certain limitations around on which kind of requirements could go. So it right now is available for single requirements and has to be scheduled on the same resource, and it doesn't support requirement groups yet. This is a feature that would be available via RSO. RSO would understand the requirements and schedule them automatically. However, this feature would not apply to the manual scheduling or the schedule assistant experiences. Let's move on to the next feature, and I would get to the demo of these two features together on the schedule board. So the next feature is we would want to talk about the new schedule board experience. Schedule board is the center of all the scheduling capabilities for the dispatcher. It is a powerful tool that brings requirements, resources, and the bookings onto the same place and forms the core of the experiences for the dispatchers. So this experience had been the heart of scheduling, and we want to invest into this experience and make it better. With all the feedback that we've received, we wanted to work on the performance of the schedule board. This version of the schedule board is to deliver great performance improvements on this new schedule board experience. This is going to be a completely new version of the schedule board, which is going to coexist with the existing schedule board as well. Until this new schedule board comes up onto the feature parity, it would coexist with the existing schedule board that is available in your organizations. By improving performance and usability on the schedule board, it makes sure that it saves a lot of time and resources for your dispatchers so that they could make use of the effective time and do their everyday scheduling operations. So let me switch to my org for a quick demo on this. So here is the familiar schedule board experience as we see it in market. Once this feature is enabled by the org admin, you would see a preview toggle up here, and you could quickly turn on the preview, which would open up the public preview version of the new schedule board. And you could definitely see the difference in the load times for these two schedule boards. As you see here, there are a few things that have been improved. Performance for the cold loads, warm loads of the schedule board definitely have been improved by a great magnitude. And at the same time, the other operations like creating the bookings and searching for resources have great performance improvements as well. Now, a few things from a usability perspective that I would want to bring up is the tabs. Tabs are now responsive and are easily searchable. So you could see the tabs indexed. You could search for a tab up from here, and you could access that tab easily, which is and these tabs are responsive, and they're going to resize based on the size of the browser. Now, looking at the bookings, these bookings are these bookings still respect the booking status of these respective entities and the colors and icons of those respective entities as well. Fundamentally, it aligns with the experience for the existing schedule board, which in a way would not need for any new learning experiences on this new schedule board. We've made few other improvements. For example, the filter panel is now more accessible, and the options on the filter panel are easy to discover. At the same time, we have the legend panel experience, which used to be a horizontal experience, is now changed into a panel experience. We also started including the priorities as part of this legend experience. Now, a lot of you might have used the drag and drop experience for creating the bookings. We made a few usability enhancements to that. As soon as you start dragging a requirement from the bottom of the requirement panel, you would start seeing the booking and how it would look like in terms of the size and shape. And once you drag it onto the schedule board, you would see that there are dotted box, which signifies where this booking is going to snap to the grid. At the same time, you would also see that the resource name on which we are going to drop this is also shown, which is easy for us to understand whom this booking is going to create it for. Even if you're on the right side of the screen, you don't have to look for which resource this booking is going to get created for, and just refer to the name right up there. Few other things that we've improved on this new schedule board is the ease to change from the old schedule board to the new schedule board. Basically, the new schedule board uses all the same metadata as that of the old schedule board, and you would not need any migration, special migration needed for switching from the old board to the new board. The new board is a PCF control, so it all comes with the good aspects of the PCF control, and eventing is done between these internal components of the schedule board, so that building new functionality for us going forward would be much easier. It lays a lot of foundation for the exciting stuff that we're working on, and we want to light up on this new schedule board. One of such features is requirement dependencies. So as discussed earlier, the requirement dependencies is a way where you could schedule a few jobs which are sequential for a specific technician to be done in a day. For example, the technician has to pick up parts before he starts the installation job, and once the installation is done at the customer location, he could complete the job and then return the unused parts to the inventory. So this is an experience that could also be used on the old schedule board, except for the visual indications would be lighted up on the new schedule board. If your instance has RSO enabled on it, it would take care of these dependencies that exist between these requirements. So let's see how it looks on the new schedule board. So I'm switching to the new schedule board experience. Let me choose the date. And you can see that these are some of the requirement dependent jobs. And you can see an icon right here, which says this is a predecessor job to this job up here. And similarly, this is a job that is a successor for this job up here. If you choose one of these bookings with an icon here and right click and show dependencies, you'd be able to see the dependency icons, which signifies that this is a job that has to be completed before this one. And similarly, this is the last job of the sequence of these jobs. So this experience eases for the technicians who have to do dependent jobs on one job dependent on the other. Let's quickly see how the setup experience for these dependent requirements are. Basically, you'd have to create the two different requirements. And once you have those two dependent requirements, you could open one of those requirements and then go to the successors and add a new successor job up here. So you could choose a job up here, and then you could save and close here. I've already added this job, so I'm going to leave it there. And that's it. RSO would start understanding these requirements and the dependencies between the requirements, and it would schedule the jobs in the respective order that we have wanted the requirements to be. Now that we've seen all the good things that the new schedule board brings up, there might be certain things that you might see that are missing from the schedule board. For example, this initial experience is going to light up the hourly view, and then the incremental updates after the April release are going to bring in the new features, light up, and then bring additional views and additional functionalities on top of this. Now, if you are an org admin and you'd have to enable the new schedule board experience, you'd have to go to the settings and administration. You would see the new functionality, which is called modify schedule board settings. All it does, it opens the solution explorer for the schedule board setting icon, and you'll be able to see a new control, which is a PCF control. And all you have to do is select it and then click on this experience and enable it for preview. Once you enable that, you could go back to the schedule board and you would start seeing the preview toggle. The default option would be off for all the users, and the users who enable it, their state will be saved, and every time they log in, they will start seeing this preview is enabled for their schedule board. With this, this feature would be available as part of the April release, as I've initially suggested, and interested people could enroll for early access and get the new schedule board and start using it. With that, I will return this back to Dave. Dave, take it away.
Thanks, Vinay. So just one point of clarification. Vinay showed requirement dependencies on the new schedule board, but it's actually available today on the existing schedule board as well. And I actually ran it this morning, and you can see that I had 3 tasks that all had to be scheduled in sequence: work order task 1.1, work order task 1.2, and 1.3, and RSO scheduled them back to back here. So let's actually talk about a few more features that are going to be released. So the first one that I think is very important is an integration with supply chain management, which is formerly known as finance and operations. So there's actually going to be a near real-time two-way sync between 4 entities to start: warehouses, customer assets, payment terms, and ship via. And this is utilizing a new feature called dual write, which brings together the finance and operations or supply chain management data tables and the common data model. So you can think of a situation where a dispatcher or a technician needs to make sure that they're utilizing the correct warehouse, or they need to make sure that they're utilizing the correct asset on a work order. And it doesn't matter whether that asset was created in supply chain management or it was created in field service, it's basically keeping the data in sync.
Yeah, I think the other thing worth highlighting here, we think this is a really great first step in sort of aligning some of these F&O FS capabilities, and we have some things that we're planning in the next, in the coming waves to extend some of what we're already offering. If for those familiar with the enterprise asset management solution, or I think they're just calling it asset management now, that supply chain management offers, we're enabling this sync between between FS and asset management, which we think opens up an incredible amount of capability for organizations that might need to lead with asset management and extend with FS for scenarios, or that where FS is the lead and asset management is an attached that offers additional value, or that sort of the combination of both of those solutions together offers just this uber sort of asset management field service capability that we really think we're starting to sort of open up that story natively. So we're really excited about this integration and sort of the road to come for aligning with F&O.
Right. And many field service implementations require an integration to an ERP system. But the big thing is with this release, now the integration, if they are using finance and operations or supply chain management, it's safe to say that the integration is just at least a little bit easier than, let's say, using an outside system. So there's a few more features that we should talk about. One that's really exciting is out-of-the-box scheduling dashboards and analytics. So with the field service app and with the resource scheduling optimization app, there are out-of-the-box reports that are built into the product that you can access. So I'll quickly show that here. So here I am in the resource scheduling optimization app, and under analytics, there's a new section here and it's called reports. And what I can do is for every time RSO runs, it can give me metrics about what was part of that run. So for example, I ran RSO and it scheduled 141 bookings to 13 resources. And you can see a breakdown of all those resources here. And you're also seeing a better breakdown of the total travel time compared to the total work time for this RSO run. It also gives you other insights like who are the least allocated resources as part of this run. Perhaps maybe they didn't have the skills necessary for these jobs. Maybe they didn't have the availability, they're on vacation or whatnot. And then it's also giving you a map visualization of those jobs as well. And you can even drill in and click into each of these resources as needed, and you'll see how it works. So this is actually using Power BI in the back end. Other than that, the experience for defining the working hours for your bookable resources has been improved. So now it's actually a UCI interface that meets accessibility standards. And whether you want to define someone's working hours or define time off or define their non-working hours, the experience is much quicker and much more visually appealing. It doesn't actually bring any new functionality, but it does make the experience a lot quicker, fewer clicks, and it meets accessibility standards for different form factors. Timestamp frequency, this is something that Jason talked about. The idea that you can have timestamps created based on all of your booking statuses rather than just your field service booking statuses. And this, like Jason mentioned, plays into the time entry functionality. Field Service Mobile is now a first-party supported app on Intune. So if you want to use Microsoft's Intune for mobile app management, it'd be much easier to do so for Field Service Mobile. And this gives you a lot of really cool functionality, like the ability to lock down the app, the ability to limit the ability to cut, copy, and paste from the Field Service Mobile app. And we see this as important for two main reasons. One, if your technicians are frequently traveling to multiple customer locations, the ability to protect the data that's on their device is becoming more and more critical. And also, if more and more organizations are adopting a bring your own device policy, where rather than giving their field technicians a corporate device, they're saying, why don't you use your personal device? Now that actually comes with some risks. So by adding the Intune mobile application management, you actually are able to extend at least some corporate control over people's personal devices, which helps you enforce your company's policies, while also limiting the need to provide the devices for people. The one important note is this is for iOS and Android device operating systems at the moment. And another feature that is being released is they're starting to port over some of the Dynamics 365 workflows for field service. Those are actually becoming Power Automate flows. So this is something that's going to be started in the April release, and it's going to be continuing on for the future releases. So with that, we want to open it up to questions, and we really appreciate everyone for joining. Before we do so, I have to mention that there are 4 great places that you can learn about field service. So the first one and the best one is docs.microsoft.com. You can see a link there. This is written documentation, and we're going to have written documentation on all of these features. We already have written documentation for half of them, and the other half will be released next week, the first week of April. This is written documentation. It's updated regularly, and it's localized into many different languages across the world. Next, we have a public YouTube channel, aka.ms/fs-videos. This is step-by-step video tutorials, and it's where this release webinar is going to be posted. Microsoft also recently launched a Learn platform, which is taking a lot of the docs and the videos and organizing them into learning paths to help you make sense of them. And we're actually going to be releasing one for Remote Assist as well, a new Learn module. And then if you're a Microsoft employee, you should tune into a podcast that we host where the PMs like Jason and Girish and Vinay actually walk through all the features that you've seen, and they do it on a continual basis every week. We walk through old and new features. So feel free to post your questions in the chat. We have plenty of time here left, so we can take a look at some of those. Feel free to speak up, or if you just want to post in the chat, we can take a look at those as well.
One point of clarification, just to make sure that there's no confusion. The way Dave phrased the timestamp frequency could have potentially caused confusion. So just want to be clear. Timestamps, booking timestamps have always worked and will continue to work just for field service booking statuses. So and field service and work orders. So so if you are using them for non-field service scenarios, that won't generate timestamps, at least not out of the box. That's a field service feature specifically, just for clarity. But it does allow an increased granularity so that you can have an understanding at the timestamp what booking status that was related to. So,
that's a good point. Thanks, Jason. All right, let's take a look at some of these. It says, can you use these new CDS entities without finance and operations? Those entities that you were seeing, like warehouses, customer assets, payment terms, those are field service entities. So those are actually part of CDS as well.
Yeah, and I think maybe the sort of follow-on question to that, or maybe the underlying ask there is, does that also mean, or so when I add the CDS or the supply chain management extension for, let's say, asset as an example, it's bringing in a bunch of other metadata from the SCM sort of solution. So supply chain adds a bunch of other fields and related entities. At the moment, out of the box, those things only come when you enable the dual write. When you have F&O and you enable that dual write. But there are things that we're considering, perhaps bringing down to a lower level. But at the moment, yeah, that comes specifically when that dual write's enabled.
Here's an interesting question. Someone asked if property grouping is driven by contracts and not territories. What is the best way to approach this for resources on the schedule board? So For people who are familiar, it's very common to group resources by the geographical territory that they're in. So on the schedule board that I was showing, I had all my resources mapped to the Washington State territory. But I believe this question is asking from Tom is, what if resources are grouped by the different contracts that they manage? How should this be visualized? I think that's something that we probably need to dive in a little bit deeper with you, so feel free to reach out to us. I think usually you have a few ways of, if not by territory, I would say the second most common way of grouping resources is creating custom skills and custom resource roles. But that's a very interesting scenario. Let's see, somewhat Tom wrote, I didn't see trending in the dashboarding for RSO. Is that something that would be available? Just thinking of how we can answer the question of how are we getting better? So this is a little bit tough question to answer. I think there is always a challenge of comparing apples to apples. So if you run RSO and it schedules 100 bookings, it's hard to have the resources then manually go in and schedule those exact same 100 bookings on the same day with the same resources to compare that they're doing better. However, over time, you should be able to see if RSO is scheduling more jobs. And it's not too hard to understand if more jobs are being scheduled to your resources by looking at things like their utilization and the total number of jobs booked and whatnot. Also, probably the bottom line. If you're scheduling more work orders, you might see it in your bottom line. And if you're taking in more revenue, that's one way that you can see. Yeah. Vinay, do you happen to have any additional thoughts on that?
I'll chime in with one minor additional thought. Apologies to Vinay.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
So not related to this feature specifically, but if you look at your RSO runs, you could see how much time in this run is spent traveling, how much time is spent working, and if you were to make an equal comparison to a manually scheduled set of jobs, I think you would see very clearly that RSO has done a better job and has done it effectively instantly, or within a few moments, versus how much time it would take for a human to sort of make an equally efficient schedule, assuming that's even possible, which I would imagine it's not. So you can start to see some of the things from existing features, but not related to this.
Right. One question, can we see utilization percentage by resource on the dashboard? So we have each resource here, we're seeing their scheduled bookings, we're seeing their work time and their travel time. And if I click into one resource, I can see their work time. Seeing the actual percentage is displayed on the schedule board. We're seeing it displayed here. But let's go ahead and see if it's actually in the report. So here's another report. This is the one that's shown in the field service app if you head to resources. And rather than just showing what's scheduled automatically with RSO, this is giving you a general idea of how scheduling is being handled. I apologize, the data in it isn't so great, but looks like we're seeing total resource utilization breakdown. I'll have to follow up with you and see if it's actually by resource as well. So let's see. It looks like it might be in this graph below here. But that's a good question. Any plans to release a Canvas Power Apps version of the mobile app? I believe that's something that they are considering, but it's not something that's part of the April 2020 wave. And again, is there a plan to bring the field service mobile into the Dynamics mobile app with UCI? Again, that's not something that is part of the April 2020 wave, so I guess I can't comment on that. When will field service integrate to Business Central? Have we heard anything about this? Anything that we can announce regarding this?
Yeah, I mean, this is something, it's interesting. With something we've talked about internally a number of times. At the moment, there are no plans for this. And so short answer is no plans at the moment for this, but it is something we've considered. We know that this is used pretty extensively in Europe, and so when Business Central, so if Business Central starts to offer a dual write equivalent, or if or if there are other ways that we can drive that integration, for sure something we're looking at, but yeah, no plans at the moment.
And it looks like there's a final question here from Tom. Would this treat trunk stock as a warehouse or stocking location? And it might be an interesting way to better manage technician stock as well as lean out the inventory they carry. Now, I will say that traditionally the truck has been defined as a warehouse in field service. I don't know, do you happen to have any thoughts on this, Jason?
Yeah, I didn't answer this question because I lost the context of the question, and so it was harder for me to sort of comment. So Tom, if you wanted to sort of share the context, maybe we can provide a better answer. But yeah, I mean, as Dave says, we do allow at the moment tracking warehouses and having those warehouses related to technicians. And so, sort of having that being related, or sort of we would consider those warehouses where there are many scenarios where an organization would consider that warehouse that truck a warehouse rather, and sort of track the stock within that truck. So that we do sort of have capabilities to enable that today, but I wasn't sure what the specific context of this question was. So apologies for probably missing what the ask was.
Yeah. So Tom, I went and posted my email address in the chat. So feel free to send that to me with a little bit more context, and I'm sure that we can get you an answer.
One question that was already asked, and I've provided a brief answer. So there was a question around sort of booking timestamps, and why would somebody manipulate those? So short answer is, one, we don't have a strong position on whether you should be able to manipulate booking timestamps. We think they provide a really great offer or a sort of option to sort of know the moment that these things happened, but we also know that sometimes people make mistakes and they forget to change their status, or simply do it late or whatever. And in those scenarios, somebody might want to change the timestamp, or with this new time entry feature, if you're using our automated time entry creation approach, we effectively expect that time entries are really driven, the values in time entries are really driven by the technicians. And so even if the timestamp that initially generated it was incorrect, we would think this would be a great place for somebody to make those changes to reflect reality rather than updating those timestamps. So if you have, as an organization, you don't want to change those timestamps, you want them to be preserved as at least the truth as to how they were captured, you could allow time entry to be that place where a technician gets to sort of adjust the story and tell the version that they think is the right sort of representation of reality, even if timestamps don't match.
Right. So we've been getting a lot of good questions, and it's easy to see that people are understanding the new features, and they want to understand where the features are going and where they were leading. So at a high level, we can always talk about the investment areas. We're investing in scheduling, technician success, and then connected experiences. But the features are constantly evolving, and they're constantly under development, and they're being improved upon. And one place that the program managers like Jason and them look at is this idea site that we have. And it's experience.dynamics.com, and then each Dynamics 365 application has an ideas form. And it separates it out by different parts of the solution. So as an example, looks like the most here is universal resource scheduling. If you click into this, you can submit an idea. You can say, hey, I saw that you recently came out with this feature. Is it going here? And I would like it to go in this direction because certain customers have been asking for it. And actually, the program managers go through all these different ideas, and they'll say, yes, we've heard this a lot, and we're actually committed to building it. They might say, you know what, that we're still reviewing it here. Like, for example, this one is under review, meaning we're still considering it. So I think this is a really great forum where you can go ahead and see what other people are asking for, and you can actually, you yourself, help shape the direction of the product. So just another minute here if anyone wants to submit any last questions. One thing that I would mention is just taking one last look at the 13 features that have been released. Ones that are live means that there's documentation available, and they have been available since February as part of early access. Things that are available April 1st will be available next week as a public preview. And things that were live in February as an early access, those are actually moving into a state, for the most part, of general availability next week as well. So if there's no more questions, I guess we can go ahead and close it out. I appreciate everyone for taking this time to join and learn about the new release. And if you registered, you will get a copy of the recording of this call, and other people can access it on our YouTube channel. But yeah, thanks a lot, Jason, Girish, and Vinay for presenting, and we'll see everyone next time.